Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. We are in the Call of Cthulhu's Keepers book today. We are looking at magic, and we're starting with mythos tomes. So, without further ado, let's dive into the mythos tome. This will be part one of a 5 or 6 part video series on magic for Call of Cthulhu. So, in Lovecraft stories, the protagonist usually learns mythos magic by finding and following written instructions. The volumes of arcane lore mentioned by the Lovecraftian circle of writers represent the intellectual invasion of the Cthulhu mythos. In particular, these ancient manuscripts and suppressed publications include recipes for the admission or return of the Great Old Ones and the Outer Gods, as described in vivid detail in Lovecraft's classic story, The Dunwich Horror. At least by implication, such writings also indicate how to force away or dispel those dreadful entities. It takes time to learn, even from textbooks that have been carefully written and specially laid out just for that purpose. Studying the crabbed, idiosyncratic, and infinitely more difficult mythos books takes much more time and dedication. These musty, thick books are often clumsily scribed by men whose sanity has long since been erased by the horror of their experiments, trials, and conjectures. The present-day apparatus of scholarship does not exist in such books. There are no indices, no glossaries, no tables of contents, and no careful definitions. There may not be numbered pages, chapters, paragraphs, punctuation, or even breaks between words. Some tomes might be best described as ravings of madmen. Yet, to the seeker of dark knowledge, such texts hold wondrous insight and power. Many manuscripts are not even in a known alphabet. Some are older than time, in languages long lost. Others are written in occult ciphers to stymie witch finders or the Inquisition, and now must be cracked before the would-be reader can ponder the sinister truths they conceal. Even if a sorcerer wrote for others who were familiar with the arcane and occult, the writing was for adepts and cultists, not laypersons. Strange terms and ideas would be written with no explanation. Valuable annotations might be made by a succession of owners, each perhaps in a different language or with a different aim, and some inscribed in error. Many mythos tomes are ancient and must be handled with care. Some are delicate and liable to crumble to dust if the reader doesn't wear thin gloves and turn the pages with padded forceps. Some whisper that certain tomes are more than merely pages bound in leather, that they are living things intended on sowing their evil taint on the unwary and acting as direct conduits to the horrors of the outer gods. Only in the present does the technology exist with which to make quick and accurate copies. So, if you're playing this in the 1920s, you couldn't make quick copies, but you could make copies because of the printing press. But if you're playing it in modern day, you can make copies pretty quick by scanning pages and printing them out. Reading mythos books. Opening a mythos tome is a dangerous business. It was written by someone who had experienced the mythos, and if the reader is successful in understanding what is written, this book will act as a conduit to the alien horrors of the Cthulhu mythos. Opening the cover of a tome might be linked to opening a door to a burning room. By opening this door, the reader is exposed to the fire and may be scorched or incinerated. The human mind is metaphorically burnt by the knowledge of the mythos. the very act of trying to comprehend the material causing the reader to suffer both mentally and physically. Some of the lesser tomes might only be a small fire, but others, such as the dreaded Necronomicon, are a raging inferno. When an investigator gains access to a mythos tome, the keeper should describe the cover and look of the book. The reader can swiftly ascertain whether the tome is written in a language he or she understands. Refer to Language Other Skill, page 66, for rules on recognizing and reading other languages. A translator must be found if a book is written in a language unknown by the investigator. The keeper should decide what gets translated, how quickly, and how accurately. If the language is unknown or long forgotten, the investigator must come up with a plan that convinces the keeper, or else the book baffles them. Initial reading. The next step beyond looking at the cover, reading the title, if it even has one, and determining the language in which the book is written, is to make an initial reading. To continue the analogy used above, this is where the investigator is exposed to the fire within. An initial reading can be swift and may represent the reader only having skimmed the book sufficient to gain some insight regarding its contents, or it may be a cover-to-cover reading. An initial reading can take as much time as the keeper wishes. This may be minutes, hours, days, or weeks, depending on how the keeper wants to shape the story. Whether a reading roll is called for is up to the keeper, who may choose to grant automatic success to anyone with a modicum of skill in the appropriate language. To make a reading roll, the player makes an appropriate language skill roll on the D percentile. The keeper decides on the difficulty level for reading the book based upon its age, form, and condition. There's a table for mythos tomes on page 237 to 239. A book printed within the last century and in good condition would be a regular difficulty. A handwritten work is likely to be of a hard difficulty level, especially if it is old. The most challenging of ancient moldering tomes, containing a mix of print and handwritten annotations, would be extreme difficulty level. If the investigator fails the reading roll, they perhaps get some inkling as to the content of the book, but have failed to comprehend it. No sanity points are lost, and no Cthulhu Mythos skill is gained. The player may ask to push the roll, but must justify doing so, perhaps staying up all night reading or using reference books as an aid to study. When thinking of consequences for failing a pushed reading roll, the keeper should be creative and include sanity point loss. If in no hurry, they may continue to read the book without pushing the roll. The timing of the next reading roll is at the keeper's discretion, perhaps once a week. The table for mythos tomes, same pages, 237 to 239, indicates the Cthulhu Mythos skill points and sanity points lost for each tome. Each tome has two values for Cthulhu Mythos. CMI, Cthulhu Mythos Initial Reading, shows how many Cthulhu Mythos skill points are given for initial reading. And CMF, Cthulhu Mythos Full, that shows how many points are given for full study of the tome. Once the investigator has made an initial reading, the keeper should reward them with the initial reading number. The reader now automatically loses the sanity cost of the tome. Non-believers do not take this sanity loss. But that said, once you get exposed to the Cthulhu Mythos and then you realize that the tome's real, you would lose that sanity. As well as gaining Cthulhu Mythos skill and losing sanity points, the initial reading also allows the reader to learn about the contents of the book and gain some idea of what spells it might contain. The reader will also have a clear idea of how long it will take to complete a full study of the book. So a full study of the book. A full study of the Mythos tome indicates a comprehensive reading, as one might make when studying an academic work or as a religious adherent might make of a sacred text. This may involve repeated readings, comparative reading, use of reference works, note taking, and so on. No reading roll is required. If any reading roll was required, it will have been made during the initial reading. Such a study can take many months. At the end of a course of study, the reader must make a roll for sanity point loss appropriate for the tome, if you're a believer. The tome's mythos rating is then compared with the reader's Cthulhu mythos knowledge. If the reader's Cthulhu mythos skill is below the mythos rating of the book, they gain Cthulhu mythos points equal to the full study number. If the reader's Cthulhu mythos skill is equal to or above the book's mythos rating, they only receive Cthulhu mythos points equal to the initial reading number of the book. So if you're already exposed to a lot of Cthulhu mythos and know a lot of stuff, the book will only add a little bit to your Cthulhu mythos. But if you're new to it all, it'll add a lot. So, subsequent periods of full study may be undertaken, the difference being that each study will take twice as long as the previous one, double all reading times. Cthulhu mythos skill increase and sanity point loss are applied in the same way. In this way, a single volume may be studied repeatedly over the years, but each time taking progressively longer than the last, and ultimately with diminishing returns. In the summaries of the mythos books, Chapter 11, Tomes of Eldritch Lore, reading times for books are given in weeks. The keeper should never feel the mercy of such a number and should shrink or increase them as appropriate. An outstanding academic with the pertinent language skills will read a book faster than an earnest but uneducated journalist. Time of study need not be consecutive days, weeks, or months. Note that for subsequent study of a book, it is recommended that the full reading time is doubled and never reduced. Only one tome may be studied at a time. The mythos rating books as references. Once full study of the tome has been completed, the percentiles entered for its Cthulhu mythos rating also quantify its usefulness as a mythos reference. Such a book may be able to provide a specific fact about the mythos, such as how long a Chthonian takes to reach maturity, or whether Golunac's body awaits its resurrection. That might be useful to the investigator's current situation or line of research. To research a specific piece of information, the investigator spends 1d4 game hours poring through the book. The players then roll 1d percentile. If the results equal to or less than the book's Cthulhu mythos rating, the investigator finds the facts or an allusion to the fact. The keeper can express the information as clearly or obscurely as desired. If the roll is failed, either the book does not hold the information or the reader failed to locate it. The user of the book will want to note what was or was not contained. Increase of other skills. Conducting a full study of a tome may grant an increase in other skills as well as Cthulhu mythos. After a full study of a tome, the reader automatically gains a skill tick for the language in which the book is written, and so their skill in that language may improve in the usual way during the next investigative development phase. The keeper should also determine whether a particular tome will provide additional benefits to the reader. Increases should be either limited to 1d6 or 1d10 bonus to the skill points per skill, or simply awarded as a skill tick and be rolled during the next investigative development phase. Other skills may be improved as a result of reading the mythos. Tomes include, but are not limited to, history, archaeology, anthropology, occult, astronomy, and other sciences like chemistry, biology, and physics. Occult books. The ideas for handling the information in mythos books can also apply to non-mythos books as well. An occult book, by definition, grants points to the occult skill after being read. An occult book does not contain knowledge increasing the Cthulhu mythos skill. Otherwise, it would be classified as a mythos book. Some occult books may well include discussions of non-mythos magic, including instructions for spells. An occult book may cost sanity points if its contents warrant it. And I'm going to stop there right before using magic. The next part's going to be using magic for the next video. So without any more diving into it, that's what we got going on with the tome so far. So to quickly recap, when you first find the book, you get to determine if it has a title, what language it's written in, and if it can even be read. Then you do an initial reading. The initial reading will hit your sanity, and your Cthulhu mythos will increase a little bit. If you're a non-believer, so you haven't been exposed to anything that's been going on Cthulhu mythos-wise yet, then your sanity is not hit, but you make a note of it because once you see your first, say, zombie or creature, that sanity loss has already happened. It just is not reflected because you don't believe yet. You can study a tome, like do a full reading, gain the full benefits of the tome. You can do more readings of the tome after that. The more readings take longer to study the tome than what it did the first time. And then if you did a third time, that would take twice as long as the second time. And it just keep growing in that way. So there's a diminishing return there on what you can gain from it. The tome itself might have its own mythos knowledge in it that you could decipher to help you solve a problem or answer questions about mythos creatures. So its rating, after you study it for so many hours looking for that answer, you can determine if it has that answer or not by rolling under its score. And if it does have that answer, you make a note of that. If it doesn't have that answer, you also make a note of that, because that means next time you won't reference that same tome for that answer. You can only fully study one tome at a time, but once you've fully studied it once, you can do the initial studyings afterwards, but you can instead study another mythos tome, is what it's more or less saying, and then gain the benefits again. Now, if there's spells in it, you have to learn the spells. Also, reading a mythos tome could increase some of your skills and the language that it's written in, that skill. So keep that in mind as well. I believe that covers everything that we just read. So until we all game again, guys,